volunteers on occasion for Earthwatch expeditions. He otherwise devotes his free time to pursuing art photography, and woodworking, tutoring immigrants, serving on nonprofit boards, playing Renaissance music, collecting and lecturing on antique ethnographic textiles. He and his wife Margie are residents of Lincoln. And he's here tonight, this morning. Thanks to a grant that we have from the John and Mary Murphy Educational Foundation. They support the educational programs that we bring in. So please welcome Mark Hopkins.
Okay, so what I'm going to tell you about was the 2004 biennial herbivore census, which is conducted by KwaZulu-Natal Nature Conservation Agency in cooperation with Earthwatch Institute. And before we start, I want to tell you a little bit about Earthwatch so you'll understand why I was there. Earthwatch is an organization that sponsors scientific research, field research. It's a concept that was developed about 40 years ago, and the concept is this, that people who are doing research need money, and they go to money sources for grants. They also need help for an awful lot of work. A lot of stuff that's done in field research, anybody can do. You can count birds, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can dust off archaeological ruins under supervision. So this concept is to take people like us and offer them the opportunity to participate in scientific research. You pay your money, you pay a fee, a one-time fee, to be a part of the organization, and then you go and do the work under the supervision of the principal scientist. What's great about it is, first of all, you're doing good for the world. Second of all, your money is supporting viable, valuable research. And best of all for you, you can go places and do things that nobody on a tourist basis could possibly do. And that's what you're going to see today, is what I was able to do here under the auspices of Earthwatch. So, Shlushluwi-Mfolozi is known mainly as the place where the white rhino was brought back from near extinction. When they started the program about more than 40 years ago, there were about 100 white rhinos left in the world. As a result of the work done there, today, well, when I was there in 2004, they brought the figure back to 11,000. And I just checked recently, and the figure in all of Africa now is 14,500, which is quite a feat. So the white rhino came back, but there's so much going on there as well. Wonderful game, preserved beautifully and available to the public, as I'll explain later, if you sit in your car. Let's get organized here geographically. This obviously is the southern tip of the continent of Africa, and we're going to concentrate our efforts down in this area right here. We will fly to Johannesburg, which is up there, which for me was a 10-hour direct flight from Schiphol in Amsterdam. The beauty of it is you're in the same time zone all the way down, so you don't have a jet lag problem that you do in long flights horizontally. So from Johannesburg, a quick hour-and-a-half flight over to Richards Bay, which is a little mining and lumber town in the Indian Ocean, and then hop in four-wheel drive vehicles and go about an hour north to Shluwi-Mfolozi Game Reserve, which is about 40 miles inland from the ocean. Also notice the St. Lucia estuary here, because we're going to see that a little bit later. When you drive into the Shluwi-Mfolozi, this is what you see. It's savanna, wide open spaces, and really quite beautiful in a very dry way. A little bit about the game reserve itself. It's in KwaZulu-Natal province, which is in the eastern part of the Republic of South Africa. It is Africa's oldest reserve. It's over 100 years old. It's about 360 square miles, which sounds like a lot, but compared with places like Kruger National Park, also in South Africa, it's tiny. But it was big enough. It was big enough for us. Excuse me. One of the most unusual parts of it is it's protected by 100 miles of not only fence, but elephant-proof fence. and that means 8 feet high and very sturdy, as you might imagine. When they started out, they electrify it. But they found that after a few months, they could turn the electricity off because, as we all know, elephants remember. And it worked. It's pristine Thornveld savanna, which you're going to see quite a bit of here. And it's the home of the Big Five, so from the touristic standpoint, it has exactly the equipment it needs. That would be lions, leopards, buffalo, rhinoceros, and elephant. Okay, those are the ones that the tourists most like to see. So looking at the reserve itself, originally Shushlui was the first part, and then they added the second. There's a state highway that runs through the middle with a huge fence so that the animals can't hitchhike. We stayed at a ranger station down here, and to give you an idea of size, it's only about 15 miles from corner to corner there, but it takes about an hour because the roads are very narrow and windy. And also another hour to get to the very northern part. There's a river up here and a dammed up area, so there are a few hippopotamuses up there, but primarily this is dry land all the way through. As far as tourists go, you can get into the park two ways. You can come in there, you can come in there. These are gates, and you can drive your own car. A lot of people go to South Africa, rent cars, and go. The rules are dawn to dusk and stay in the car. There's one or two areas of vista where you can get out and go maybe 10 yards from the car, but that's it. And there's a very good reason for that. It's a dangerous place. There's a lot of dangerous animals there. This is what it looks like as you drive around. This is Thornveld savanna. These are acacia trees. They are, as you'll see in a little bit, mostly thorns. Not very pleasant to bump up against, but very pretty in a very sort of dry sense. Some of the land is riverine, so that you get little alleyways like this. Anybody see any wildlife in there? That is not a crocodile. That is an iguana. But generally, this is the scene. Now, we were there in August. August is the middle of winter. Remember that you're in the southern hemisphere here. The reason that we were there in August is that we were counting game, and when you're counting game, it works best if there's no leaves on the trees. So as you can see here, some of the leaves are evergreen, but some were not, and it was a lot easier that time to do the census that we're about to do. This is a white rhino, and this is one of the animals that we were concerned with. A little bit about the rhinos. There are two rhinos indigenous to South Africa. There's the white rhino and the black rhino. There are actually 3 more species, all of them in South Asia. There's the Indian rhino, the Javan rhino, and the Sumatran rhino, all of which are very endangered. But our concern was with these two, of which, as I told you, this is come back beautifully. These guys are still very much endangered in Africa. There's about, at last count, I've seen about 3,600 of them on the continent. A little bit about the animals. An interesting thing is, even though they are grazers or browsers, in other words, they're eating vegetation, they're herbivores, they have no front teeth in their skeleton. They have nothing but these huge molars back here. That means that in order to either tear the grass up, because the white rhino is a grazer, or to tear branches off the trees, it's entirely the muscles in their lips that do it. And this is the reason why that there's a move afoot to stop calling them white and black and call them flat-lipped and hook-lipped, because it makes an awful lot more sense, especially in the fact that the white rhino is not white, and the black rhino usually is not black. In fact, the general consensus is that white rhino comes from the African word for white, wide, and these animals are very, very wide. A little bit about the behavior. These are social animals, these are not. You will see those in groups. I saw them in groups of 5 and 6. The blacks are alone except during breeding season. Otherwise, they are remote and stay by themselves. These are much, much, much more dangerous than these are. I had many cases where we came on with these guys. Now, this is an animal that weighs probably 20 times what I do and took off like a shot when they saw me. These are considered to be the second most dangerous animals in that area. Elephants being first, black rhinos, and then Cape buffalo. You probably read that hippos are considered to be the most dangerous. At least they're the animals that kill more people than anybody else. But since this was a park with very few hippos just in one corner, we did not consider that in the figuring. Here you can see why they call them wide. This is kind of like the neighborhood oil truck. These guys, as I said, can go around 5,000 pounds, and they are enormous. And here you can see the color variations in white rhinos with these fabulous horns. And this, of course, you probably know, is the primary reason for their being approaching extinction. Because these things are used, they're considered to be an aphrodisiac in lots of parts of Asia. Yemen prizes it because they make dagger handles out of these. It's no more an aphrodisiac than the hair on your head is, because the hair on your head, these horns are made out of the same keratin material. So, other animals, there are about 350 elephants on the park. There's very large herds of Cape buffalo. Cape buffalo, you have to be careful with these guys. As you can see, if you look carefully, it's a male. And the herds are managed by the females. And when the males outdo their breeding ability, they're cast out. The females say, out, you're not needed anymore. And they spend the rest of their life being very, very angry. So these are the guys, when you're wandering around, that you're worried about getting charged. And believe me, they do. Zebras. These are the Birchall zebra or Savannah zebra. There are two others, the Grevy zebra and the mountain zebra, which are not in that area in Africa. And the giraffes, which I found were my favorites. These guys are so cool and so huge. I mean, if you're near them, you would stand up to about here on that animal. And they're just absolutely, and also lovely creatures. There are also the famous warthog, the ones that you see running with the tail straight up in the air. You can see the tusks here. Impala, the smallest, actually it is the small, next to smallest of the antelopes in that area. The Zulus like to point out to their children the McDonald's M on their stern here. Now, there are many more antelopes that we were charged with counting, and I just couldn't get pictures of them. It was like trying to get pictures of white-tailed deer in New England. You see them and they're gone. So I had to do it this way. There's the kudu, which is a beautifully stately creature, very elegant. Nyala, we saw a lot of. This is the female, this is the male, very, very different, to the point where years ago they thought that these were two different species. Wishbucks, and then the waterbuck. There's a wonderful story on this. The Zulus tell their children that when God was creating the world, the waterbuck sat down on the toilet seat before the white paint was dry. There are the blue wildebeest. These are the ones that you see in the Serengeti by the millions. Down here, 50 would be a big herd of them. And then the little duikers, which are little tiny loner antelopes, where you could almost step on them before they jump up and scare the bejesus out of you. But no harm done. So those are the animals that our job as a herbivore census were to go out and count. There were also plenty of other animals that we were not involved in counting. The omnivores here, the savanna baboons. There were also vervet monkeys in the area. Lots of interesting insects. Lots of birds, except that this was the middle of winter, so most of the birds have gone north in Africa for the winter. And then, of course, there were the carnivores, which we were not involved in and hoped we weren't involved with. Lions, leopards, cheetah, spotted hyena, and wild dog. And we'll talk a little bit more about them later on. So, our job was to be there doing the census. So, the obvious question is, why count them? What's the purpose here? Why are we spending money and effort to do this? First of all, we want to identify and remedy overabundance. Are there too many? Because if there's too many, you're going to have dietary problems, they're going to starve, or you're going to get lower reproduction rates. You want to also identify and remedy unnatural species declines. What's happening? We haven't got as many as we did before. What do we do about it? So the goal is to preserve a balanced ecology, and the means that you have to take, if there's too many, you take the large ones to auction. That would be the elephants, buffalo, giraffe, and rhinos. Take them to auction. What happens at auction? This is where the zoos all over the world go. Also the game reserves in South Africa, or private game reserves and public game reserves. We'll buy them if they need them, sell them if they've got too many. The small ones, the nyala, the other antelopes, go on the open market for bushmeat. I had nyala when we were there. It was quite good. And if there's too few, you import more from other reserves. And this is happening all over Africa as the populations vary, is that they're balancing them out by bringing in or taking out to other places. So our job is to count these animals. Now, this is the land in which you're counting the animals. Now, how would you do it? Would you fly an airplane? You could fly an airplane over here. You could see 50 buffalo up here. What are you going to do about the 16 zebras that are down here and cooling it off in the middle of the woods? You're not going to see them. So airplane census does not work well there. You could do the old New England deer hunter thing. You could line up a whole bunch of people with pots and pans and bang the pans and sort of advance driving all the animals into Zimbabwe. So that wouldn't work. So the system that we were using is called distance sampling. And it's a very interesting technique that was used originally to count whales and porpoises. And here's how it works. Volunteers walked 26 transects over the 8 weeks. Okay, this is a transect. In other words, a straight path that's been cut, mainly so that you don't have to climb over things and worry about nothing except actually counting. The average length of a transect was just under 5 miles. And the challenge was to count all herbivores within 500 meters of either side, which means you're counting a swath of 1,000 meters, which is a little over about 2/3 of a mile. What are you counting? What data are you getting? You're counting how many species. Which species? How many of each species? What is the distance? How far away are they? What direction are they? What's the GPS position of them? And from these data, the population of the reserve is concluded by computer analysis. Now, people always ask the question, aren't you just counting the same animals again and again? Yes, you are. How does this work? I still don't really understand it. It's a very complex computer algorithm, but it works. It's worked for bird populations, it's worked for marine mammals, and it was working here. So if you have any more questions on that, go to your web, not to me. Okay, so here we are, walking the transect, and each one of us every morning before dawn, we're assigned to one of the local Zulu rangers who were trained guys, grew up there, knew the land, had a military rifle, which was our protection, and our job was to just walk along with them and count wherever we saw. Here you can see a transect cut through the grass up here. Okay, so this gives you an idea of the land that we were in. Transects, they work like this. Here's one. Notice it goes from a road to a road. That means you can be dropped off here. When you get to the other side, radio ahead, you will be picked up. Notice also that they run from east to west, which means that if you're out in the dawn sun, the sun is behind you, so it's not blinding you. So a lot of thought went into this. So this will just show you the transects that were cut through this part of the property. And each one of these, one of us was assigned to every day. This was my favorite. You'll see pictures of this because at the end you had to take your shoes off and cross a river. This was Forever Wild area down here, and we also did the same thing for the northern part of the. But whatever would happen here would be congruent with what was going on down here. Okay, this is me, decked out as a white game hunter here, white game counter, I guess you call it. Carrying all kinds of equipment. I've got a rangefinder, I've got a GPS, I've got a compass, I've got a clipboard. Let's see, what did I carry here? I had binoculars up here, water here, camera here, a couple of candy bars, and that's how you outfitted for a day. This was taken at the campsite, and you notice behind me that wire? At night, they turned on 8,000 volts into that thing. And notice the height, it's for elephants. Notice how high it is. That means hyenas and leopards can get in underneath it. So you were very careful if you got up tended business at night. This is how we did the data. The information here, which transect, what was the date, who was I, who was the ranger, what time. Some information on the weather, which was important. And then the recordings down here, we use codes, so IW would be white rhino. I saw 2. Was it accurate? Yes. Sometimes we weren't sure, so you have to evaluate that. It was 47 meters away. The site bearing was 42 degrees. The transect bearing was 288 degrees. And then you've got the latitude and longitude from the GPS here. What was the vegetation type? Was it savanna? Was it canopy forest? Was it riverine? And then burnt. I'll explain that in a minute. So this would have been white rhinos. This would have been giraffe. On a really good day, you'd fill out this whole sheet. On a bad day, maybe you get down to here. So you saw a lot of animals. And then returning, we usually get back to the research station about 11:30, and then each one of us would team up and enter the information into the computer. So every day this was pouring into the computer. I mentioned burn before. This is a burn ecology. Originally it was by lightning, now it's controlled by the rangers. Because it requires burning to propagate the seeds and to keep the browse and graze at its best level for the animals. So this was typical. And a couple of times we were assigned to an area, just a few days after the burn, and I was sort of saying, why are there going to be any animals in here? Well, this is 7 days after a burn. You can see what happens with the grass. I mean, everything just springs back, and the animals love it. So that answered that. Our first thing as a group was to get together with the principal scientist and for a briefing session. I think this was a bathroom break, so some of the chairs are empty here. And she was an interesting gal. She's a South African botanist. And it was a briefing on how to count, what to do. We had some practice afterwards. And also a lot of information on safety. Like, for instance, if you're charged by a buffalo, lie down and bury your head as far down as you can, because a buffalo, the configuration of the horns are such that they cannot get down and scoop underneath you the way, for instance, a rhino can, and flip you up in the air. So smart ass here said, well, don't you get trampled? And she said, do you want to get gored instead? And with the rhinos, climb a tree. Well, what if there's no tree? Well, they didn't have an answer for that, so. Okay, so first dawn, we're out walking, getting there at dark so that you really watch the dawn come up. And this is when the animals move. And again, this is sort of what I looked at was the backside of a ranger. You can see it's still dark. These guys were wonderful. They knew these animals. They knew where to look. They saw things I never had saw. I'm pretty good at seeing things. I hunted as a kid. I was baffled by the ability that they'd have. We'd be walking along, and he'd stop, and he'd point, and he'd say, "Impala, 7." And I'd see one horn sticking up over a bush, like that. And he'd say, "No, 9." And then we'd walk up, put the information in, then we'd walk up and flush them, 6, 7, 8, 9. It was absolutely perfect. I had one guy looking at an area probably as far as that, sort of down the hill, and he said, and we had to learn the Zulu names for the animals. Mkombe is the white rhino. He said, "Mkombe, tu." I said, "Where?" He pointed, and I could see this dot. And I put my binoculars on it, and it was a white rhino. He was right. And I said, "Tu?" He said, "Bebe." And between its legs was a calf. And this was probably 400 yards. So these guys were really, really amazing. We had a lot of fun with them. Okay, a typical sighting wasn't like a zoo. This is sort of what you'd see. This is a zebra, obviously. Impala, here's a few here, another one there. There could have been 40 more behind the bush. So you really had to scout around and make sure that you're getting the right numbers. This is what the Zulus call Mkonkoni, which are the blue wildebeest. Really kind of silly animals. The Zulus like to say that God put the Mkonkoni together from the leftover parts after all the other animals were made. So, and here you can see these animals are about to spring into action. You see the tenseness here, and within 3 or 4 seconds they were gone. So a lot of times when you came up on them, they weren't there very long. They put a lot of space between thee and me. The reason obviously being that they've been predated by human beings for centuries. So. Some of the settings would show 2 species at the same time. Here you've got warthogs and a zebra. So you take care of them, then you start all over again and do this. So it took some time, and you went very slowly. I was on foot when I took this picture. These guys were just wonderful. I mean, he just kind of watched me and sort of said, "You want to take my picture?" Now, a little factoid here, which I thought was kind of interesting. This is a male. How do I know it's a male? Because he's eating at the top of the tree. The females, for some reason, will eat lower on the trees. The Zulus call these Mbilamiti, which means eats at top of trees. And this guy, we actually did have one of the women in the group was charged by one of these old males. And the guy's instructions was to put 1 bullet over their heads. If that didn't stop them, put 1 in them, but don't shoot for the heart. And he had to. And they checked afterwards, and he had a wound in his shoulder, but that was it. But you have to, because they can mess you up pretty badly. Elephants, our instructions were, we know how many elephants there are in the park. They're pretty easy to spot. If you come on an elephant, back up. Get out of there, because these guys are very, very dangerous. You see pictures of the safaris in Kenya, Tanzania. A friend of ours just came back recently, and here's a picture of us having lunch at a tablecloth and under an acacia tree. And, you know, about where the windows are over there were 5 or 6 elephants. And I said, "Was there a fence there?" And he said, No. I mean, where we were, you didn't get within a quarter of a mile of an elephant. That's how respected they were by the people. And they kill people, especially the males and the young males, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. This was my first sighting. This is a white rhino. And where you had to be careful, if you look very carefully here, you can see a pair of ears. That's a calf. And you relied on the Zulu Rangers. if we ran across this in the path, you made a big circle around there. You didn't try to get close. You were very respectful. The danger that you had with the calves are they're curious. They don't know who you are. The old lady doesn't know who you are. And the calves are liable to come over and have a look. And guess who's right behind them? So you had to be very careful. Some of the transects were not as easy as the ones you saw. Here's one coming up through the woods here with a lot of stones that have been turned over by baboons looking for grubs and scorpions for lunch. And some places were these washouts, which were very hard to get over. In the wintertime, there's heavy rains here, and there would just be a torrent running down through here. Here's another one. So when we came to these, we had to clamber down, go across the stream bed, and then back up the other side. And this was crossing the river that I mentioned, which is really kind of nice. I gotta get a glass of water here. Kind of nice after you've spent 3 hours in the hot sun. Even though it was winter, it was mostly 70s in the day and 40s at night. So traveling in the back of a pickup truck at 40 degrees, it was really cold in the pre-dawn. There was nothing in the river where we were, but upstream there were a few things to worry about. And he respected these guys very much as well. This is the Nile crocodile. We also had interesting things that were kind of curious. Anybody want to guess what that is? Give you a clue. Yeah, we got to have one grandparent in here that knows what that is. Aardvark, exactly. Right? The head ranger told me that he'd worked there 27 years and he'd seen 2 in his life. This is how sparing they are. They have these long tunnels. They're only nocturnal, and they live on termites. So you see lots of sign of aardvarks where the termite nests have been broken open, but I never hope to see one. So here's a typical sighting. White rhino here. This was taken with a telephoto lens, so I was probably 150 yards at least from her. And then there's actually 4 zebras down here, so that would have been a sort of a dual sighting. And this one, we were moving along, realized that she had a tiny little calf under her chin here, so we gave this lady a wide berth. We weren't fooling around. This is what you did not want to come around the corner and see. These are very, very formidable animals. On foot, as I said, they're skittish. If you're in the back of a pickup truck, you can literally drive right up to them. They just associate no danger with vehicles. And as I said before, our instructions with the rhino charge was climb a tree. Need I say more? This is typical acacia. So a little bit about where we stayed, what we did when we weren't doing that. The Cinda Camp is a non-tourist research center. It's very Spartan. We actually spent 2 weeks in this old army tent. The permanent buildings were for permanent staff there. A chow hall, there were bathrooms, hot showers. I think the water was hot half the time. We had electricity from a generator 3 or 4 hours a day. So it was very Spartan, but when you're with Earthwatch, you don't expect to be comfortable. You expect to be interested. This was Abednego Quanazi, who was the head ranger. Abednego, and I had to ask him, what was your brother's name? And he said, yeah, Isaac. And his niece, Stulakumbi is her name. They're really neat people, and he was so interesting. He spent his whole life at the park, and he just knew everything about it. And this was our group. This was a very small group that I was with, myself, a couple of young people, and with his wife. This was the principal scientist. She was a local tracker, and the rest of the girls were Zulu, except for my friend Josie here, who was Venda, spoke 8 languages. Almost had a PhD in botany, some field of botany. Tina who apparently was so small that the parents in the hospital said they wanted to call her Teeny, but they wrote it down wrong, so she's been Tina for the rest of her life. And she was working in the kitchen. She's a neat gal. And some local gentleman showed up and kind of accosted her through the window and said he was interested in marriage, had 3 cows, would she be interested? And she said no, she wasn't interested, and he showed up 2 days later and he upped it to 6 cows. And she explained that she was 20 years old and wanted a college education. And when we left, I gave Tina a big hug. I said, don't you settle for any less than 100 cows. But they were neat people. We had a lot of fun with them. After the work was done, if we could persuade one of the staff people to do it, we would do look at game, do game drive around, because the game starts to work again in late afternoon. And these are the typical roads around Swiss Louis and Pelosi. See lots of it. Here's a few impala. Here's a troop of savanna baboons. Big male up here. You don't fool around with these guys either. Abednego told me, I asked him one time, I said, can these guys handle their own? He said, I saw a male leopard fight a male savanna baboon one time. I said, who won? He said, neither one. So they're pretty formidable.
Have you been a vehicle? Do they jump in?
No. This is not like, you know, I cringe when I see things like Kenya, where somebody's sitting in a vehicle and there's a cheetah on the roof. No, that's a zoo. That's a zoo. This is wild country here. So these were just a few photographs that I took while we were driving around. Late afternoon sun was coming through. It was just beautiful light. And as you can see, most of them are interested in me. And the interaction of these giraffes is really interesting too. These are 2 males, by the way. And, in fact, after I took the picture, the big one mounted the little one, so I thought I would leave them to their dignity. The giraffes are interesting. I didn't realize that those horns that they have in their heads are actually part of the bony structure of their scalp, as opposed to almost all the animals that you know where the horns are separate from the actual bone structure itself. Here you can see them here, and that, by the way, is one of their serious weapons. I picked that skull up. The whole skeleton was in the grass there, and it must have weighed 40 pounds. And this is one of their defenses: is they just get that neck swinging with that big head at the end of the thing, like a pendulum, and they can bowl over a lion with that. But to me, these are just wonderful Disney-esque creatures. Look at the eyelids and eyelashes here. So this would be a young one. You see how the horns haven't quite matured yet. Some more of the sightings. This was one I took from the back of the pickup truck, and they sort of emerged out of the grass again because the little guy wanted to see what we were all about, and you can see Mama was not far behind. This would have been mud, which is their prevention for the ticks and other parasites and that sort of thing. So they love the mud baths. And this was just a big bull who was grassing himself, and so we drove right up close. Huge, probably close to 2.5 tons, that animal. Second biggest land animal in the world. We took one day off, Sunday, and this was the Santa Lucia estuary that I showed you on the map, and took a boat ride up the estuary. And can you see what these are? Yeah, hippos. Interesting guys. Spend the day in the water, spend the nights on shore grazing. They will go sometimes 6, 8, 10 kilometers inland away from the water. And as my friend Josie, who was the gal I showed you there, told me, she said, you can always smell them coming. He said they're pretty ripe. There were also the big Nile crocodiles. I saw one crocodile in one of the local stations. It was a pet, where its back was from here to here. I had no idea they were that big. Probably 20 feet long. Huge animals. And other big things, this is the Goliath heron, which is the world's biggest heron. This is mangrove. Are you familiar with mangrove? Where the roots grow out back into the oxygen. So this is not shrubbery, this is actually roots sucking up oxygen to get into the system of the mangrove. And this is how they spend a large part of their day, propping their heads one or the other. They don't swim, they walk underwater. So that they're happiest where the water is maybe half to twice their depth, where they can just walk on the bottom. And here's a little 2-week-old baby. I was just reading last night, looking up some stuff. Apparently, the closest relatives taxonomically to hippos is whales. So I just put this picture in here to just sort of say, remember those eyes, because these guys kill more people than anybody, any other animal in Africa. And mainly because they're territorial and because the people who get killed are in boats and they're tipped over by the hippos and they drown. So it's not like they're eating them. So back after a day off for another week doing the transects. First morning, we were driving along. There were 3 of us volunteers and 3 rangers in the back. Going along, it was just before light, and all of a sudden a huge bang, and we stopped dead, and the 6 of us ended up with this huge tangle of rifle butts and feet, and buffalo cut out right in front. I came out of the grass, and they just hit it dead on. Oh my God, what a mess that was. Buffalo walked away, brushed itself off, and left. And we had $2,000 worth of damage to the truck. So back on the transects for another week. Now, I put this picture in here just because it's the symbol that you see on the sides of the trucks and signs and that sort of thing. It sort of symbolizes the area. Here you've got the KwaZulu-Natal Nature Conservation Service in English, in Afrikaans, and in Zulu, which is the sort of tricultural aspect of the place. The Zulu war shield here, because this is Zululand, and the white rhino, because it's the sort of symbol of the good work that's being done at Shushui and Pelosi. So we were loaded onto a pickup truck to go and see Zulu dancing, and we thought, oh boy, this is some roadhouse that, but we'll go. We came around over the top of the hill, and this is what greeted us. This young bull elephant had been harassing the tourist bus, and until he saw us and charged us. Well, Abednego, who has lived in this place his whole life, knew how to deal with it. He just slammed it in reverse and backed off, which discouraged the elephant. The old elephant was stopped and reached up and pulled down the tree and had lunch. Now, you notice how this was steep here, and on the other side of the road was steep going down, and this is why you don't fool around with these animals, because, one quick flip of the hip, we would have been rolling down the side of that mountain. So we backed up and took about a 10-mile detour, and got out of the park, and this just gives you some idea of the land around there. This is farmland. It's very poor. This is a typical housing complex for Zulu farmers here with the brown houses. You don't see cattle here, but cattle is the wealth there, like it is in so many places in Africa. And one of the things that surprised me, having been in a lot of third world countries, is I've never been in a country where everybody walked. I mean, usually in a third world country, you'll see tractors, donkey carts, bicycles, you name it. No. In this area, everybody walked. And our destination was a schoolhouse. And this is where we were going to see Zulu dancing. Well, this turned out to be one of the most interesting parts of the whole trip, actually. We were just absolutely astonished with this. We all went in the schoolhouse here, which looked like this. This is the assembly hall. This gives you an idea of the poverty that is going on there. The whole compound was surrounded by barbed wire, which if it hadn't been there, this place would have been stripped down to the foundation. I think there were 4 or 5 panes of glass still in the windows. And this is where these kids are getting an education. And as far as we can tell, having talked to a couple of the teachers, a good education, considering what they might be getting. So, Zulu dancing. All of a sudden, the drum started to beat, and this big lady arrived with this huge drum, and these kids filed in. And they started to sing, and they started to dance, and they had this about a 10-minute song about HIV/AIDS. And it was fantastic. I mean, they would have got standing room only in a theater in Boston. It was so good. The music was so good. The dancing was good. The lively kids. And so this went on for about 10 minutes. And then the boys came in. And now this is the traditional Zulu war dance with these wonderful costumes. And this isn't made up stuff. I mean, this is a tradition that goes back generations with the Zulus. And they were leaping around. I don't know why they didn't break an ankle with these floors. They were doing flips. They were doing splits. It was just phenomenal. It was very, very exciting. At the end, I asked a couple of kids if I could take their picture, and they all kind of zoomed together and put this. But I love the combination of the sort of traditional garb and then the schoolgirl shoes here and whatnot. So this was a real kick. Another thing that was kind of fun, a couple of night drives, we went out to see if we could find leopards, which meant going in the back of the pickup truck, which was very cold. Here you can see another controlled burn up here. This was a young couple from Michigan. And one by one, we took turns standing up looking over the cab with a big searchlight to see what we could see. And lo and behold, by God, a leopard crossed the road. And she lay down in the grass and thought we couldn't see her, and we drove in a little closer. And I was really excited. I'm up there trying to take a picture with a flash, and the camera's going dead battery, dead battery, dead battery. So I got this one picture, and then she got up and left, and I got this out of focus picture of her too. But at least I got a picture of a leopard, because again, these are nocturnal animals. And when you see the sort of zoo pictures that you get from the safaris in Kenya where they're out all day long, we don't see them during the day here. These are night creatures. The one thing that I hope to see, and kind of the last day I hadn't seen, was a black rhino. As I said, they're very rare. And I had to reconstruct this because this was probably the most exciting thing of the whole trip. Alfred and I, he was the only Zulu with a Christian name, wonderful guy, had been walking along on this open area, and nothing was going on, and we weren't seeing much, and we were both kind of lazy, not paying attention too much. And I was about from here to him, behind him, and he walked through these two bushes, and all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, and it was stomping and thrashing, and he started backing up. He was shouting something to me in Zulu, which I think meant climb a tree. He was shucking live shells out of his rifle. He was so excited. And I'm saying, my God, I'm looking around, no trees, and what the hell's going on here? And all of a sudden, this black rhino had been eating the other side of this bush. And he had walked up within about 4 feet of this thing. And the rhino came crashing across behind this bush and ran across at about 35 miles an hour, this whole 100-yard stretch of field. And it happened so fast I couldn't get a picture of it. But, I mean, both of us were sitting there with our hearts. And Alfred, who I think spoke about 50 words of English, was standing there after it was over saying, "Shh." So a little bit at the end here, just to give you an idea of the kinds of scenes that can develop that you can see there. Word came down that there was a pair of young lions that were breeding at a particular water hole, and so we all went to have a look. So we got to the water hole, and this big, bold, white rhino, by the time I got my camera out, it was all over. He was lying with his back in there with all 4 feet straight up in the air. This is how agile these animals are. And so, no sign of the lion at that point, but he kind of walked over out of there and off towards a bunch of impala here. And you notice coming a little closer here. Notice what's going on here? This is one of the few male animals that can urinate backwards, and I guess they use it to lay their scent down in places. Well, as you can see, he's doing a pretty good laying down. So he walked over, and we noticed that the impala were spending a lot of time not looking at him, but looking back over their shoulder here. Can you see that? And all of a sudden, out of the bush in front of us, this lion pair came out of the tall grass. And they kind of walked over, and they were kind of eyeballing the impala here. Now they don't hunt during the day, so this was not obviously a hunt type situation. But all of a sudden, these guys spooked and ran up a hill here, and here they are. Here's the male. You see the buck here, and this would be all his harem. Either harem of either females or young pre-adolescent males would also be in the group. And they were both watching something, and then here was the cause of all the concern. Another lioness came out of the grass and walked over and said hi, of course no. And so they lay around for a while, and then the lady decided it was time for a little more action. They will breed 100 to 200 times on one estrus, which lasts about four days. So by the time they get through, both of them were totally exhausted. It happened so fast, I couldn't even get the camera up. He bred with her. You can see she's still on the ground with her tail wrapped around his leg. So that was kind of an exciting thing to see this whole thing. I didn't get a good picture of it. So that, folks, is the end. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to tackle them.
Were you always just one guide and you on the transit?
One guide and me, yeah. And we asked the question, why can't the guides just do this? Why do you need us? And the answer was, one worries about safety, the other worries about counting, and also half of these guys are illiterate. The older guys were illiterate, so they just couldn't have handled what you had to do to do it. Yes. But, one thing I should mention is, every one of you guys, if you have the health to do it and you're willing to pay the price, you can do this too. You can do this too. This is what Earthwatch is all about. And I'm not here to sell Earthwatch, but it's an amazing opportunity to do things that the general public could never do. I mean, I walked 60 miles through the savannah in places where nobody could get out of their car. And yet, I saw things that you would never see as a tourist. So check it out. They have a wonderful website. Yes?
Please tell me again what the burrowing animal was.
Aardvark. 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 A-A-R-D-V-A-R-K, I believe.
Is that the same as an anteater?
Oh,
It is an anteater. It's one of many species of anteater. Yeah, aardvark. Yes.
What did you do for food? Did you eat any animal?
Oh, you picked up grass and fruit off the trees and stuff. No, the food was good. And one of the things about Earthwatch is they do a good job of giving you places to live. They keep you fed. There's decent bathroom facilities. I was talking with this lady who's done a few too. It varies. Sometimes you're in a hotel. The most primitive one I did was in Tasmania, which is that island south of Australia, where we had to bring our own tents. So each one of us were sleeping in our own tents, and we were eating kangaroo, Tasmanian devil, so we had some interesting things. But they take care of you. You don't have to bring your own lunch. Yes.
Now, how expensive would a trip like that be?
Here's the way it works. You pay a one set fee, which is a charitable donation to Earthwatch. Most of them now that I've checked run anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000. Then you have to get to a rendezvous point which they assign. So in this particular case, I had to get myself to Richards Bay, which meant flying to Johannesburg, switching over and flying over. And because I've done this before, and I don't like to cut corners, I spent the night in Johannesburg, I spent the night in Richards Bay, so to give some time leeway. So the whole trip cost on that thing was big because I elected to blow a wad on business class. So I think the airfare was about $6,000, and probably $3,500 for Earthwatch. Now, the interesting part of this is that most people qualify for the fact that you are making a cash donation to a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so it's tax deductible. So everything that you pay directly into the expedition is tax deductible. If you decide to go to South Africa and then spend 2 more weeks, going to Cape Town and that sort of, then you have to proportion everything. But so that's a pretty good advantage, and you don't have to fly business class. Thank you. Yes.
Your flight getting there isn't tax deductible?
Yes.
Well, it is.
Yes. All related, directly related expenses: hotel, food,
Okay.
cab to the airport. Yes.
Okay. The other question I had was, since the predators predate, thank you, okay, at night, did you ever ask why do the hippos come out of the water at night rather than in the daytime?
If you were a lion, would you tackle a hippo?
I've seen pictures where they tackle a single
They do.
lion. They take on a lion.
They do. They do.
And a lion takes on an elephant, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've seen the same picture just recently, a couple of nights ago on television. Yeah, well, there are risks to be taken, and the little ones have to eat too. But I suspect they don't wander too far away from the
I
water.
was just curious if they would do it at night as opposed to daytime.
It's a question of their skin, right? Their skin, they have some kind of a built-in sunblock kind of stuff that doesn't work that well. That's why they spend most of the day submerged. Yeah, right. Yes.
I'm curious about the relationship between Earthwatch and the scientific station and the training of the local residents and how much the Earthwatch contributes to advancing, as you say, when one woman wanted to go to college.
Yeah, okay. Earthwatch has an alliance with the KwaZulu-Natal Nature Conservancy, where basically they're providing the manpower for these things. They're providing the scut work. So we were staying at the KwaZulu-Natal facilities, but I can't tell you how many of the people there would come up to us and say, thank you for doing this, because we just couldn't do it by ourselves. We don't have the manpower to do it, or the money to pay for the manpower. So it was just a working relationship, and it's done every 2 years. So the next one will be, was just this past summer, actually. So it's, yes?
What kind of range accuracy were you trying to get from where you were on your GPS position?
I had a picture of myself with the one big, square, good rangefinder. The rest of us, including me, were equipped with World War II rangefinders from the Republic of South African Army, which were accurate to 250 yards. I mean, they were just absolutely awful. You take a reading and then you try a reading again, it'll be 100 yards different. So we just, we guessed in a lot of cases, or we debate with the rangers. Yeah, it wasn't exactly that good. Okay. Well, that's what I said before. You are double counting. You're counting again and again and again over the course of 8 weeks. Now, how does that work? As I said before, I don't understand the algorithm at all, but I can tell you that it does work. Okay, so, yeah. Yes?
How many sites around Africa does Earthwatch have? How many programs do they have?
Depends on the year. I think right now, I don't check them very often. I haven't done one since 2006, but I know they've got one on Grevy's zebras. They've got one on brown hyenas. I don't know if they've got one on brown hyenas. 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 Brown hyenas I think there's 3 or 4 others. I know they got some things in Madagascar, working with the Fusa, which is this wonderfully strange predator that they have there. But I'd say a good half a dozen, maybe more. Go to their Earthwatch. Go to their Earthwatch website, which is earthwatch.org. And what you will do is, when you come up, you'll see a world map, and if you click on one of the continents, you will get a list of all the things that are going on in that continent. Yes?
Are some of these rangers skilled in medical care if somebody gets bitten or something?
I suspect they probably pull up some kind of herb out of the grass and grind it up and try to feed it to you. They know folk remedies. That's it. No, these guys are trained mainly in use of firearms and also in just the animals. But they've grown up with these animals, so they know it. No, if something had happened, they all had radios, and we weren't worried about it. We would have been taken care of. And if worst comes to worst, there was an airstrip about 3 or 4 miles away, and they could have brought in a plane from Richards Bay and gone to the hospital that way. Earthwatch is very good about that kind of thing, of personal safety and health. Yeah.
Well, implicit in this whole discussion is how many Earthwatch volunteers get hurt each year.
That I don't know, and I think you ought to ask them a question and see how they bobble that one. I've never heard of anybody. I've done 4 of these, and I've had good friends who were the principal investigators. And I've never heard of a problem. I'm sure there are, but they're very, very good about it. Yeah, yes.
How long were you on this one in South Africa?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah. Most of the programs are either a week or 2 weeks. I did one in Costa Rica, which was a week. We were catching octopuses for a week. So, yeah.
Were you out walking
Every day except the Sunday. Yeah. Every day at dawn. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit of an irony if you end up having to kill an animal when you're trying to possibly save them or help them. How often did that happen? Or not very often.
No, doesn't happen at all. But I mean, what's your choice to stand there and say, "Get me"?
Well, you mentioned the Cape Buffalo that was shot. But
yeah. I don't remember them talking about having to kill any animals. They're very concerned about this animal. I mean, for instance, the rangers went out that night to try and find the animal and make sure it was okay. So you don't have a choice, really, with these things. You don't fool around with them. Yeah. I mean, you sort of want to say, "Hey, I'm trying to help you out, guys." But it doesn't work that way. Yes?
Yes, you alluded to private game reserves, and I'm wondering if you or Earthwatch or the rangers or staff, the scientists, had opinions about some of these and their policies and practices.
Well, I'll give you my opinion. The private reserves that are there, as a living zoo, I think are terrific because you're exposing people to the animals the way you expose people to the animals around here, and they do a very good and very conscientious job. What I totally disagree with and hate the idea of, but you're not going to stop it, is there are a lot of these commercial places where a big wig from Texas goes up there and spends $50,000, and they turn him loose with his big high-powered rifle in 3 acres of land, and he gets to shoot the lion, which they put in there out of a cage. I mean, the mentality, and I'm a former hunter. I grew up hunting birds and deer and that sort of thing. The mentality of that is just unspeakable to me. But it's going on, and it's going on a lot. And it's bringing a lot of money to the countries that do it. So, there's that side of it too. Yeah. Okay, well, you've been a good audience. Thank you.